Michael Cohen, the one-time fixer and lawyer for Donald Trump, took the witness stand and accused his former boss of manipulating his net worth as Donald Trump stared blankly ahead. And this was the first interaction between these two men in 5 years. And the media is having a field day. It's almost as if there's a championship boxing match happening. Michael Cohen was supposed to testify a couple of days ago, and he said he was sick and couldn't come. Donald Trump, of course, said, oh, no, he's a chicken. He didn't want to show up in this courtroom and face me. And, then Michael Cohen had some response to that, and they've been going at it in the media. And finally today, that showdown happened. So Michael Cohen spilling the beans, and of course, Donald Trump going right outside that courtroom doors, going to the courtroom steps, telling reporters that Michael Cohen is a convicted felon, that he's a liar, that he's a loser, and that he's, making up stories on Donald Trump. How does this play out, Dr. Rahim? These two very powerful white men fighting. It's if it wasn't so serious about subverting our democracy, it really would be comical.
Yeah, it would be comical. I mean, in their actions, we can find some humor in that, right? To really see two men acting like children, going back and forth, bickering with each other, right? Honestly, but it's actually taking place out in the public and in the courtroom. It's sad, right? It's sad that we're still talking about one Donald Trump. And the fact that he is trying to call out his former lawyer as a felon when who's to say you're not going to be joining him with that title very soon? So I would be, very careful in the rhetoric I continue to spill if I was Donald Trump at this particular moment when it came to people who were once in your circle. But this is sad that it is taking place around people who were willing, and even Cohen in this place, who were willing to act against the principles of democracy, the principles of the United States, to act against, the people who ultimately entrusted you all to uphold, even if everyone in the United States didn't vote for you, they still entrusted you. You had a responsibility. And the fact that we're continuing to have these conversations, we're continuing to see the layers and the many layers of this particular onion unfold is very telling. We're ultimately sitting kind of like in a twilight zone. Is this the Matrix of some sort? Or are they, just, building up these particular roles and hoping that one day Hollywood would give them the best movie deal ever? I think that's what some of these individuals are seeking to have, to go down in history as being these people who really just stood on the wrong side of justice and doing what was right.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because when you look at this, some of these people are literally right out of central casting. I don't think the best writers in Hollywood could have envisioned this plot twist that a man who runs for president, who refuses to turn over his tax returns, who tells the entire country that he's a billionaire 12 times over, now is sitting in a courtroom being accused of civil fraud. Judge already determined that he committed fraud. And now it's just a question of not if he will pay damages, but the question is really how much will he pay to the state of New York? And I asked a New York lawyer, Dr. Mitchell Brown, this ain't new stuff. You New Yorkers knew Donald Trump was engaged in this conduct. Why did it take so long for him to face any kind of, accountability? And this isn't a criminal fraud case. This is a civil fraud case. And it's really baffling to me that he got away with this for so long, even though it was happening in plain sight.
Yeah, it is baffling. And it is a reminder to us of the system that we live in that tells us who is important and who's a nobody, right? Donald Trump has had these problems even before he became president. And we said, not we as in you and I, but we as in the royal we said it doesn't matter, right? Because we have an agenda to push what we want, and that's not what the American people want. And we see that playing out, and they acted dangerously then, He's been acting dangerously. They've fallen down on the job in very critical moments, and they're not being held accountable. And so we have these systems again that's not built for everyone to be held accountable. And my hope is that this changes. That this is a tide of things changing with folks. Being indicted on some of this corruption that really puts our democracy at risk. And so hopefully we will see more and more of Donald Trump being, tapped down and held
that
accountable.
would happen, but his team, his political team, says every time Donald Trump is indicted, every time something happens to him in a courtroom, they fundraise on it, and his polling numbers go up. So the judge in New York, one of his federal cases in New York, criminal cases, the judge issues a gag order. They fundraise on that. The judge temporarily suspends the gag order. They don't want to suspend it. They want him to be gagged, because anytime a court imposes on him the standards that would be imposed on everyday people, they get to go out and tell the world that he's being politically persecuted, that he's being persecuted because he's winning, because he's leading Joe Biden. So they want him to suffer. They probably want him to get convicted because they think he'll really win the presidency if he is a convicted felon. So all of the rules of the road that would apply to you and me and everybody else that we know don't apply to him, which is why 30 years later, after he's been defrauding the state of New York for decades, he's now finally being held accountable. And it's because of the strong attorney general that New York now has in Letitia James. And it's because of Fani Willis, Professor Rahim, that he is being held accountable in Georgia. And there are a lot of legal experts who faulted Fani Willis, who criticized her and said this RICO charge is too big, it's too sprawling, you indicted too many people. And I hope they now are eating crow. They should be, because she extracted 4 guilty pleas from the 19 co-defendants, and 3 of them are lawyers who were in the inner circle, who are going to now testify against Donald Trump. So kudos to Black women lawyers, Black women prosecutors around this country who are holding Donald Trump accountable and I think some of this is just jealousy of white male lawyers who are mad that they weren't able to do what these Black women are doing. But hats off to them for doing the job and holding our democracy. When you need something done, find a woman.
Ask a Black woman.
Find a Black woman.